Grayzone Warfare launched into an early access preview session the other day, and frankly, I was tempted to drop everything that I had on my busy IRL schedule just to play more and more. We've touched on it a few times here since it's announced late last year, and I know it's hit or miss with some people, but right up front, I'm genuinely impressed with the game at a preview stage of early access, and I think this has all the potential and the tools to become the next big tactical shooter, and today we're going to talk about why that is. Drop your thoughts, drop a like, and subscribe for more Grayzone Warfare coverage along with other FPS content. I'd love to have it in the community, but for now, let's jump into it. So firstly, what's the gameplay like in Grayzone? Well, we've talked about how it's an extraction shooter with PvPvE, and eventually we'll actually have PvE as well, which we'll come back to that in just a second. But PvPvE was the only mode enabled as of this small playtest going on currently, so everyone can mostly fight the AI, and if you venture far enough, or maybe are unlucky enough to find people venturing towards you as you're a freshie, you'll need to be ready for a firefight. But coming back to that mention of future PvE, that's a heavy distinction that I think is going to be really cool for this game as opposed to other extraction shooters or other tactical based ones like this. We talked about Incursion Red River the other day, an extraction shooter that was solely PvE, and though it was also offline capable as another added benefit, one of the selling points was of course no PvP combat for players that maybe didn't feel as comfortable in those situations but still wanted a game to level up their own journey and grind out something like that. Grayzone having both of those, I think, is incredible for maximizing potential. You capture both prospecting audiences there, those that love the extraction genre but maybe don't want to lean into the PvP so much. You can still do everything there, but also you have the players that love the player-on-player combat as well. Just a really cool option for both in one package that I don't really think I've seen too much from other extraction shooters out there, but honestly I really think that's going to help long term. But anyways, talking about it, the game, there is a lot of things to love here, I think, with this, and a lot of good things right up front. Firstly, there is so much depth to this game, it's actually kind of mind-blowing. The inventory system, ammo systems, vendor systems, reputation and task systems, those are all, of course, stuff that you're probably accustomed to and things that you come to expect from an extraction shooter, or just more so anything tactical-based, where you have all those different ammo types that need to be compatible, all those different builds of weapons that need to be compatible, going down to very minute details in ways that you can end up surviving in the world of Grayzone. The inventory system very much so akin to other games of the genre, but from a technical perspective, the damage systems, the ballistic systems, they're all insanely complex, which is perhaps overwhelming at first, but it's truly more of a, I can't believe they thought of that after getting accustomed to it more and more. The more you play, you're like, wow, there really is something for everything. Graphically speaking, I was pretty impressed. Now, the frame rate absolutely could use some work. That's just an optimization thing, which we'll touch on a little later on in the video with some things that I definitely think we need to mention. But graphically speaking, there's tons of attention to detail. There's an animation for just about every single action you can take: eating, popping a painkiller, bandages and splints, blood bags, all that kind of stuff. There's something for every animation. And honestly, a lot of it looks way more refined than the gameplay showcase a month or two back now at this point when they first released actual gameplay footage of it. So very happy to see some of that polished off here at this. And honestly, I think the rest of the world of Lemang looks just incredibly good. The map and the world itself is absolutely massive. During my first half dozen or so hours of playtime, I felt like I barely scratched the surface of the town just outside of my base camp. And it wasn't until a bit later that I felt like I was like, oh yeah, this is where I need to go for that mission, or I can help you out if somebody asked me where something is. One thing, unfortunately, is that the ground zero zone is not in this build that we currently have, but will be in the early access that everybody has available to them. So we couldn't quite yet just gear up and venture in to see what the secrets of that zone holds, but it is something that we'll see in time. That's probably intentional, just to not spoil any sort of surprises that may come along and have the general community at large kind of experience it all for the first time together, but that's something that wasn't there. But the world itself, honestly, still barely scratching the surface out of a dozen hours plus at this point. Voice and proximity chat is incredibly clear. Whatever they did for their VoIP is nuts. It's crystal clear, it's great use of proximity drop-off and all. It's probably one of the best voice chats that I've seen in a game just yet. Beyond that, combat gets really intense, whether with either just the AI or actual players. I haven't had too many PvP engagements just yet with other factions. There are a lot of times where you're going to be coming in close proximity with other people of your faction. That's something that's denoted by blue squares on the TAC map as opposed to your squad being green, where it is a hardcore tactical shooter. So you do not have any notifications above a player's head or anything like that, where you have easy identification of that's a friendly. So you gotta be kind of aware of that as well. I think that we saw a little bit of casualties of team kills, intra-faction team kills rather, where it wasn't necessarily my squad killing each other, but I do believe one of my squad accidentally made that mistake, thinking another faction member was an AI and they accidentally popped him. So you're gonna have to be aware of that kind of stuff. But of course, if you venture out more so past where your main sort of town is, you're going to find engagements at those higher interest areas, places like military strongholds or something like that, where there are a bunch more resources that are higher value. You're probably going to see some combat around there. But honestly, one of the big things that I've loved so far, just not only just from this play session, but it kind of reaffirms what we thought going into this early access play session, was that there is just a beautiful amount of communication with the dev team. This is something that I kind of had high hopes for to begin with, because they were very communicative with the community of creators, at least leading up until this point, that it was very much so a refreshing thing to see. Like, this is a dev team that truly cares. They want as much information out there and as crystal clear as possible, talking directly with people that are posting content, writing articles, whatever the case. But since this early access playtest has launched and has had any sort of players among it, they have been step-by-step communicating everything. And I think that is awesome, and fingers crossed that does keep up in the future. Now, that said, there still is a lot of work here ahead. I mean, we are talking about an early access project, something that does still have a lot of work ahead of it, but is just finally being played in a public setting for the first time. One of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing, is optimization. I think this is something that is definitely still going to need some work. From what I heard, I did not get in on the early preview session, the first one that was held, but I had heard that this is better optimized than it was at that point. So just a few weeks down the line, that does give me hope that we can see this kind of stuff fixed out and optimized even further going forward. But there, of course, were a ton of frame drops that on a super rig with a 4090 and all the bells and whistles out there, honestly, I was getting roughly like 80 frames on average. Granted, I max out everything. Like, I really like to stress test the games, but the silver lining of mentioning these frame drops and need for a bit more of optimization is, to my knowledge, the whole world of Lemang is considered. Like, the game doesn't render in chunks, so the entire world, to process that and still be pulling highest possible graphic settings, highest possible everything, is definitely something that I'm impressed. But again, just a little more optimization can help and go a long way. One thing that I will say though is that because it does render the whole world all at once, and you have so much that is rendering in real time, this is not going to be a game for older PC specs, and that's unfortunate. But I'm hoping that something is done with this optimization that makes it a bit more accessible to somebody that doesn't have a super rig or something like that. Middle of the line PC, hopefully it runs perfectly, but right now it is something that might give you a little bit of trouble. One other thing that I noticed in terms of trouble was that safe zones, your base camp, doesn't seem to actually be too safe. And I don't know if this is intentional or not, but I'm pretty sure that it's not. Because, like, if you go into your base camp, you can shoot your guns and pop off anything you want. You can do anything in there, but you will not do damage to your friendly faction companions. However, I had a situation where there was somebody that was just off in the mountain beyond my base camp and quite literally sniping people as they spawned into the server. So enemy fire, it appears, can come into an area that you should be otherwise safe in. And that was something that I'm hoping gets fixed out and isn't something that's intended, but I don't know. There were a few bugs with UI. I spent my first 4 hours unable to collect any mission rewards. As far as I know, that is just a simple restart the game and then you'll be able to collect it, that kind of bug. But before I figured that out, not gaining any currency or any ways to upgrade my gear was a bit frustrating. Also, could not do a mission that required me to take an item from the vendor first and foremost because of that. But again, the close game restart, that fixed it all. So we're all good. But again, just hoping that that gets a little bit more polished off on that one. AI are wildly inconsistent. Number one, in health, but also two, inconsistent in skill. In the health aspect, some it will take one shot to kill, others will sponge bullets. I think I put like 15 or 16 rounds into an enemy AI at one point and they didn't die, which sounds kind of crazy, but it actually is something that is, since noting this point in my video notes, it was mentioned that we are going to see a fix for this, so we shouldn't have that issue going forward into the larger EA access upcoming. Inconsistency in skill, though, that's something that it's just like Tarkov in that sense, where you have an AI that will shoot you and miss everything, like a cliche stormtrooper from Star Wars, but then you'll have one that will pop a headshot on you and kill you immediately from 100 meters away before you can even spot them. So it's very hit or miss in that sense, so you just want to always be having your head on a swivel and aware of your surroundings. But absolutely agree, they should be challenging, but right now it's this weird imbalance, I think, of you don't know quite what to expect at this point. But anyways, overall thoughts, the game is going to release in early access, so the game will continue to be built out further with the community, but having played a bunch of early access games recently, this one felt incredibly full, I guess you could say, and to a degree polished for early access comparatively to other games. Obviously, we talked about how there's optimization issues and things that still need to be worked on, but it is something that I think overall, in the grand scheme of things, it plays and feels really good. Like, literally the only complaint that I had for, say, that recent mention of Incursion Red River and the early access that it had was that it was, after a few hours, you kind of did most of everything that you could, and that in time, I think that's going to be a massive hit, but it was like, it was going to take time. Gray Zone, after a few hours, I felt like I still only scratched the surface of my subsection of the map, with tons to still be able to explore, tons more to rank up my reputation with, and to be able to unlock more items and earn and trade more for, the combat and all. There's just so much to this that I think my big thing after these first few days is that I wish it was going to launch at the end of this week here for everyone, and not that we'll have to go back to waiting to play it again. I know this might not be everybody who's a regular's cup of tea on the channel, that it's a more hardcore shooter, more tactical driven, but I'll tell you this, I have not felt addicted to a game in a long while, besides maybe Helldivers, but this one, as soon as I get off for the night, I've been thinking, okay, so how can I get up, finish all of my tasks for the next day as quick as possible, so I can jump on as early as possible to play. I think that Gray Zone Warfare has every bit of the tools and the potential to be a massive hit. Now, I know people are going to pull the cliche COD killer type of thing, but for the extraction shooter genre, it's going to be the Tarkov killer. I think that enough of this is going to be different that it doesn't have to be direct competition like that. I think it will be, but I don't think that it's necessarily having to be that. I don't think you have to strive for one thing to be a great game. You just have to focus on the fundamentals. You have to focus on doing your game right, and I think that's what Madfinger Games is doing right now. So I've loved early access so far, cannot wait to play more, but that's where we're going to wrap it up. So let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think here of what you've seen so far of Gray Zone Warfare? Like it, dislike it, whatever the case, drop your thoughts down below. But if you guys enjoyed the video, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe for more Gray Zone Warfare coverage, along with other FPS content if this isn't your cup of tea. I'd love to have you in the community, but for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care, and peace.